Hi everyone, and welcome back to Coachy TV. In this video, we're going to break down Tre Rivers' 2-mile regional runner-up race. If you missed it a couple days ago, we released actually a regional championship race from Tre Rivers in the mile. That video is in the description down below if you didn't see that one, if you want to take a look at it after you watch this 2-mile regional runner-up breakdown. I am Kyle Giacono. I'm the head boys cross country and track coach at Wharton High School in Tampa, Florida, and I have been for the last 6 years. If you want to look at my credentials, they're on the screen. So the 2-mile race metrics, just talk about this briefly before we look at the video itself of the race. So the best predictor of who's going to win a 2-mile is who has the best VO2 max. This comes from a study from a couple years ago where they really tested the 5K itself, but since the 2-mile is run right at someone's VO2 max, it's going to be at least as good of a win predictor as this 5K was shown here at 94.3%, probably actually a little bit stronger indicator. So when you're training a 2-mile kid, this is what you need to work on, their VO2 max or their best aerobic pace possible. And based on someone's VO2 max, the 2-mile, as I said, it's run right at someone's VO2 max. Or as this indicates, you can maybe run it a little bit faster. 2-mile, or excuse me, VO2 max is basically how far and fast somebody can run for 10 minutes. So in this race, we're going to see Tre is going to run significantly faster than 10 minutes. So that's how you can get somebody running a little bit faster than VO2 max here at 102%. Where's the energy going to come from in this race in the 2-mile? So the 5% of it is going to come from the ATP that's already sitting in somebody's cells, and then also the creatine phosphate system. That's going to be the first 6 to 7 seconds. It's also going to be responsible for some surging within and at the end of a race. 15% of the energy is going to come from the long speed system, the anaerobic glycolytic system, and then no surprise that 80% of the energy is going to come from the aerobic system. This is the longest race that you pretty much run in high school track, so it's going to get the biggest share of the supply from the aerobic system. So a little bit about Tre as we're entering this race. He was the number 1 seed based on our district times, but he was actually the number 3 seed based on season best times. You're going to see this race separates between, there's 3 kids that are up front, and those are the 3 kids that had the 3 best times entering this race based on the season. This was Tre's first race of the day. In Florida, at our regional meet, we run the 2-mile at 8 in the morning, and then he also was in the mile later on at about 6 o'clock. And in fact, the video that I was mentioning before, it's in the description down below. It's from his mile later on this same day. Tre is a pure 2-mile kid. We train him like a 2-mile. We really focus on that aerobic system for him. He's a kid that if you do a little bit too much or even just a normal amount of speed work, it can really affect him negatively for a while. So he would be one that we would really focus a lot on our aerobic power, our long run, our tempo runs, and those types of things, and he really thrived on that. His 2-mile PR entering the race was 9:31.67, and that was from mid-March. And this race is the last week of April, so say about a month and a half afterwards of development. His other PRs to this point, his 5K cross-country time is 15:52. His mile PR is 4:27.80. His 800 is 2:02, and his 400 is 55.51. So let's take a look at the race itself. Tre is right here in the blue top. Let's go ahead and let it play out. So we're going to be filming this from about the 250, 200 meter mark. So in Florida, we have 4 districts that feed into our regionals, and 4 are taken from each district, so there are going to be 16 kids who qualify for this race. Doesn't get out too incredibly fast. The first lap is about 71, and as you notice, there's a huge pack here, and you'll notice right here, Tre basically gets squished right between all of these kids. And I think that's a little bit because he did take it out maybe a little bit too conservatively. Not a horrible conservative race, but right in sort of where he maybe should be. But he, at this point here at 300 meters in, decides he's going to go a little bit more to the front and maybe take a little more command because he kind of got squished there at that 200 meter mark. And you'll see things kind of separate themselves here as these kids, these top 3 kids, as I was mentioning, the young man leading is a young man named Tristan from St. Cloud. Second place kid is a boy named Ben from Sarasota, who is actually our 2-time cross-country state champion, and then Tre is in 3rd place. And I like that at this point he really establishes his position in that top three. These are the three horses in this race, and he's really going to kind of stay in that mix as this all kind of progresses here in this race. Again, that first lap was in about 71 seconds, which is about 9:30, maybe slightly under 9:30 pace. Really fluid mechanics. Nobody's really doing anything crazy in terms of turnover. As you can see, a lot of this field is still in this race, but we're only 600 meters into the race, and things will really separate here, which it normally does in a 2-mile. Typically what will happen in a 2-mile, and why you see kids sort of separate and hold on and reverse split as these three kids up front will, while the rest of the pack falls away, the three kids in the front of this race are running aerobically. They're running at VO2 max. This next group right in here, while very, very strong runners, are probably running above their VO2 max pace right now. They're probably closer to their mile pace. They're developing maybe a little bit too much acid. That's going to hurt them later on in the race, and that's why you'll see some kids that look comfortable maybe through the mile really sort of fall off, where all three of the kids in the top three of this race reverse split this 2-mile. That's why quite often you'll see the pack coming through halfway through a 2-mile is not even close to where it finishes in the top half in terms of scoring. Some kids are just running too fast for themselves right now. So we're about 1,000 meters in. Still really good mechanics. The pace pretty much is consistent on this first lap. It's about 71, 72 for this first group. As you see, things start to get strung out. As I mentioned, some of these kids are starting to feel the too much acid developing as they realize that they've probably gone out maybe a little bit too fast. At this point, where those three kids up front, you can see their mechanics are just very smooth, very locked in. There's no lifting of their arms. There's nothing crazy where they have to try and pick things up to hang with anybody. They are well within themselves as we get 3 laps into this race. Tristan is actually the senior. The two boys, Trey and Ben, right behind him are actually both juniors in this race at this point. And you can see he's actually going to make a tactical decision here where Trey kind of holds on to this third place position, which is exactly where he should be at this point. You'll notice Tristan doesn't really mind as Ben from Sarasota tries to get on his shoulder and move into the number 1 position as we start to close out here this 4th lap and close out the first mile. The young man who's actually in 4th place, if I remember correctly, is a sophomore at this point, also from St. Cloud. St. Cloud's had a very good program these last few years, and you'll notice he really does fall off after this first mile because he's a very strong runner. He's a 16-minute runner, if I remember, from this cross-country season, but he's really probably just outdoing it, trying to make the state meet when he probably should be in this pack back here. I know for a fact this young man from Plant, Walker Thomas, makes it out of the state meet, and I think he kind of falls apart here, where these guys in the front are just, they're well within themselves. Ben has taken over the lead position. We came through the first mile in, I believe, 4:48. Tristan is still locked in here in the exact same pace, and Trey has just hold on to this number 3 position. As the pace does start to pick up just a little bit here, this is a race where if you're going to run it as well as you can, you should reverse split a 2-mile. If you go out really, really fast and you're slowing down on the second half, it means you've run too fast. The acid is too much of an influence, and you're going to get fatigued from it. If you're going to run a good 2-mile, if you're going to PR in the 2-mile to your capabilities, you're going to want to reverse split it as these 3 kids up front do. And as you can see, as I mentioned, the young man from St. Cloud, while a very accomplished runner, is starting to fall behind, as these 3 kids up front are still running aerobically, where the young man from St. Cloud, who's now drifting further and further back, ran too fast, too early, and the acid is really sort of influencing his race here as he gets fatigued, and he's going to get gobbled up by some of these other runners who stayed within themselves and tried to also reverse split as these 3 young men are up front. So we've completed 5 laps, 1,200 meters to go. The last 800 meters of of the 2 mile, the last 25% of almost any race is the critical zone, and that's where you'll see things really start to open up. As I mentioned, you can see the young man from Plant who does get out and get to the state meet. He's starting to creep up here. He's a really strong, accomplished runner, as he's saved himself, as these three men up front have, as we're closing in on 1K to go in this race. Really solid race by these three kids up front. Tre just holding on to that number 3 position, and probably a good time to talk about the fact that if you're where Tre and Tristan are right now, they're doing less effort than Ben from Sarasota is by leading. If you're running behind somebody, they're blocking the wind or already pushing through the wind, and it's easier for you to go through. There was a study that found that you use about 2% less energy if you're right behind somebody. So Tristan and Tre are not at all in a worse position by being behind Ben. They're probably in a better position now as we start 800 meters to go, and we are in the critical zone of this race. As I mentioned, it does start to open up here a little bit. Tre didn't respond to it quite as quickly as Tristan did in the 3rd place position, but he covers that move here pretty quickly with 600 meters to go. Now, you are going to start to feel the acid here at this point. You're reverse splitting it. You are using a little bit more of your anaerobic glycolytic system with 600 meters to go. As we said, 15% of the race energy is going to come from this. You do notice Tre's mechanics do break down just a little bit. He does get his hands up just a little bit when he does get fatigued, but he does lock in here for this last lap. And all 3 of these young men on this last lap really do turn things over. Tristan goes to it a little bit sooner. He almost starts going from about 500 meters, as you'll notice here, and really does hold on and separates from both Ben and Tre. Tre holds on to Ben here and makes a move a little bit later. Really do commend Tristan here for knowing that he had the ability to hold this. It's not a true all-out kick. It's a 2-miler kick, but he wins the regional championship right here by going when he did. Start to go 300 meters to go. You'll see everybody really start to open up just a little bit more. Tristan goes to another gear. Ben goes to another gear, and so does Tre. And then from 150, they have to negotiate this young man who's still got a lap and a half to go. Tre goes to the outside and makes one last move to pass to get into 2nd place with 150. I'm not quite sure if Ben doesn't have the foot speed that Tre does, and it looks like he tries to cover it. I'm not sure if maybe Ben was happy with the fact that he was already getting out to the state meet either way, but Tre definitely does have the turnover too, and I think Ben right there tried to and then kind of just cruises through. But Tre definitely had the turnover and put himself in a position to where he could move up into this 2nd place runner-up performance. Just great race. You can see again that reverse split and how it works so well for these 3 kids. So let's go ahead and break down what happened in this race itself. So it was almost too conservative early on. You do need to be conservative, obviously, in a 200 meter, but he got squished, as you saw at the 200 meter mark, because it was there was too many people around at that point. So he then establishes a good position to close out lap 1. He let Tristan from St. Cloud and Ben from Sarasota do a lot of the work and held in right behind them. Controlled first mile at 4:48 with good relaxed mechanics. And then he had the turnover at 150 to make that one last pass. So let's take a look at, he was 9:25.77, which is a new PR to place 2nd. And then the lap and mile breakdowns, lap 1 and 2 were both at 71, and then 72 for lap 3 and 4 for 4:48. Then as I mentioned, this reverse split speeds up just a little bit, not crazy, until the last lap. You see a lap 5 of 70, lap 6 and 7 of 71, and then lap 8 of 63. Now, even though lap 7 is the same as lap 1, obviously you're pushing a lot more because you don't have the influence of the anaerobic glycolytic system. You're having to use more of that anaerobic alactic system. You're using more glycolytic, so it's more effort to run that 71 there at the end. And then lap 8, as you would expect, a really strong kick. Tre ends up going 63. Tristan probably a touch faster. Ben right around 63, 64 also. 4:38 second mile, reverse split. As I mentioned, if you're going to run a good 2 mile, it's going to be a reverse split. If it's a positive split, it means that you either were not controlled enough on your first mile, or it means that you probably didn't have anybody to push you on the last mile, where these 3 kids had great competition to push them. So, if you like this video, please think about liking or subscribing. If you saw something maybe that I didn't break down in this, please leave it in the comments down below. I'm going to keep doing these race breakdown videos for as long as I have these videos.